What's going on? Welcome back to Orange and Blue football coverage. We're going to be covering the upcoming matchup tomorrow night with Florida and Tennessee. It's an old school SEC rivalry between the Gators and the Volunteers. It's on the road at Neyland Stadium at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, just like it was at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for at the Swamp last year when the Gators beat the Vols. In this matchup, Florida is heading into Tennessee 3-2 record. They were 1-2, but they've won their last two games against Mississippi State and UCF. Tennessee started off 4-0, but lost last week to Arkansas. We're going to be breaking down the storylines and the key matchups heading into this game. So, obviously, Florida and Tennessee have been going at each other for a long time. It's an old school rivalry that really picked up the pace in terms of uh, national media spotlight and legacy wise in the 90s between Philip Fulmer and Steve Spurrier, both of whom college football Hall of Fame coaches. Steve Spurrier winning a bunch of SEC titles and Florida's first national championship in '96. Philip Fulmer had Tennessee obviously in big primetime matchups, a few SEC title game appearances, and helped win a national title with Tennessee after Florida did 2 years later in 1998, beating the Seminoles in that game to win the national championship. The last time Tennessee won a national title, and was the head coach of the last SEC title game appearance for the Tennessee Volunteers in 2007. Now, the rivalry has lost a little bit of luster because both of these programs have struggled throughout the 2010s. Now Tennessee has seemingly climbed up out of that stretch these last 3 years, going 7-6 and then 11-2 and then 9-4, and they're 4-1 right now. So the program has climbed up back into national prominence and relevance in college football, while Florida has been sputtering. They have had some up years and some down years, and in the Billy Napier era, they've been very inconsistent, except for when they go on their bad stretches. But now they seem to be gaining some momentum, maybe develop their confidence back. Um, Winning on the road at Mississippi State, heading into the bye week, and then having a nice feel-good win against in-state opponent UCF at home in the Swamp, and now they're going to be heading into what is by far the toughest part of their schedule, starting with Tennessee tomorrow, because then after that they have Kentucky, Georgia, and then Texas, and then LSU, and then Ole Miss, and then they finish off their season with Florida State, in which that game is a lot easier now compared to how it was perceived back in August. But we're going to talk about the storylines heading into this matchup. As I said before, different directions. Florida going 1-2, getting blown out by Miami and Texas A&M in their first three games at the Swamp, mind you. So the perception and the narrative around the program was that not if but when Billy Napier is going to get fired. Billy Napier hasn't necessarily gotten himself out of the woods with the last two victories against Mississippi State and UCF, but it is a nice start a step in the right direction if Billy Napier wants to flip around this season and potentially save himself his job positioning for next year to come back to coach Florida in 2025. For Tennessee, they started off 4-0, but then they had a very bad, heartbreaking loss on the road last week at Arkansas. I didn't see the game, so I can't really comment on what went wrong for Tennessee. But what I will say is that Josh Heupel has now had a history of some bad losses on the road. He's lost on the road at Florida twice. He lost to Arkansas last week, and now heading into this game, coming off of that bad loss, I think this Florida game has become a must win for him because next week he's going to be facing Alabama, and he'll be at home for that game in third Saturday October. But you do not want to be heading into a game, big rivalry game with Alabama, losing back to back games when you were ranked in the top 10 to Arkansas and to Florida, another rival outside of Alabama. And Alabama is coming off of their loss to Vanderbilt last week, so they really could use a win on the road at Tennessee to maybe offset the embarrassment of losing to Vanderbilt. And for Tennessee, not only do you have this matchup with Florida and Alabama in back-to-back weeks, but then you're gonna have a bye week. You're gonna be playing Kentucky, who did beat Ole Miss in a big upset this year, and then you're gonna be on the road at Georgia a couple of weeks later, and then 2 weeks later you're on the road again at Vanderbilt. And normally, you Tennessee fans will probably scoff at the idea that they should not overlook Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt beat Alabama, so that Vanderbilt matchup is going to be a lot more crucial for Tennessee if they want to make a 12-team playoff this year. So now that we talked about that, another storyline heading into this game is the coaching narratives. For Billy Napier, obviously he's been the butt of bad coaching jokes for the better part of 2 seasons now. A win here on the road at Tennessee could possibly be that a kick in the butt for what the Florida program could need, not only just to salvage their season, but to also maybe salvage their recruiting, because right now obviously their recruiting is suffering, and that's what happens when you have a head coach perceptively be on the hot seat. And a win here on the road at Tennessee would not only give Billy Napier his biggest road win overall, even if it is coming off of a loss to Arkansas, but it would be the first time that Billy Napier has won 2 road games as the Florida Gator head coach, and that would be again another step in the right direction for the Gator program. And for Josh Heupel, after losing to Arkansas, if you lose to Florida and Arkansas in back-to-back weeks, there's some serious question mark of whether or not you are the head coach that could bring Tennessee into the promised land, and that is competing for national titles like the program was once doing in the '90s. Now, I'm sure he's not on the hot seat, is not putting Heupel on the hot seat, but you don't want to lose to Florida after you just lost to Arkansas last week, and now you're going to be 1-3. That will make you 1-3 as a head coach for the Vols against Florida, even though you've had the better program for the last 4 years. So coaching narratives is going to be a big storyline after this game is over for either one of these coaches, for whoever wins this game. Another storyline is that Florida, even though, like I said, Tennessee has been the better program, seemingly has not had an issue with beating the Vols, going 2-1 against Tennessee over the last 3 years, and having successful stretches against Tennessee for, quite frankly, the last 20 years. I think Florida is 17-3 against Tennessee over the last 20 years, dating back to 2004. Yes, dating back to 2004. So it seems like no matter if Tennessee is the better program or the better football team or not, there's just something about playing Florida that just gives them the troubles. And keys to win this game for Florida: familiarity. Billy Napier is heading into year 3 against Josh Heupel. The Florida team is familiar with the tempo that they like to run and how they want to run the football. They are familiar with Tennessee and Heupel's system, and I think that's very important when you're heading into a big rivalry like that, because you now know what to expect from this team, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and for the Nico quarterback, you're going to head into this game having 5 weeks of footage to determine what does he do well, what does he not do well, what he's comfortable with, what he's not comfortable with, and how to game plan and attack that. Another key to win for Florida is that they get 2 very nice playmaking receivers to come back off the injury report this week. Trey Wilson's coming back along with Aiden Mizell. Aiden Mizell had a very good showing against Mississippi State. He's getting comfortable into his role on Napier's offense, and the quarterbacks, both Mertz and Lagway, because Florida likes to do the dual quarterback system thing, they are developing trust in him as well. So having that will also take some heat off of the run game, because both Florida and Tennessee's offenses pride themselves on running the football. And having Trey Wilson come back into the lineup will give Florida another big play threat at the wide receiver position to help them, along with Chimere Dike, who's stepping nice into his role, Elijah Badger, who's settling into his own, the transfer from Arizona State, and freshman speedster Tank Hawkins. And that will just take a lot of load off of Graham Mertz, take a load off of those receivers, take a load off the running backs. And a key for Florida in this game is that they have to protect the quarterback rhythm. And what I mean is I know they like to do the dual quarterback system, but in this game, as important as this game is for the coaches, the players, and the fan bases, and for recruiting as well, I don't think you can just willy nilly mismatch and just choose to, okay, we're just gonna switch out quarterbacks every couple of drives or something. I think this is a game where you have to protect the quarterback rhythm and not, you don't want to offset the momentum each quarterback has going for themselves in this game. So I think you want to protect that if you're Billy Napier. Keys to win for Tennessee, it's a 60-minute game. And I say that because last year Florida just blew out Tennessee in the first half, 26-7. But Tennessee played much better than Florida did in the second half. It's just that they didn't capitalize and get touchdowns when they needed to, and they kind of took the kind of drained the clock on themselves. They have to play better in the second half than against Florida than they did last year, and Florida cannot play second half football against Tennessee the way that they did against UCF. That because it almost allowed UCF to get back into the game. Another key for victory is that Nico has to be way better efficiently than he has been throughout the season. He started off with 22 for 28, 314, 3 touchdowns against Tennessee Chattanooga, but he's been a downhill slide ever since then. 16 of 23 for 211 yards, a couple of touchdowns against North Carolina State, but he turned the ball over twice. Kent, 10 of 16, 173 yards and 1 touchdown. Uh, Oklahoma, 13 for 21, 194 yards, a little bit better, but just barely, just underneath 62% completion percentage. And against Arkansas, he was 17 of 29 for 158 yards. And in terms of running the football, back-to-back weeks against Oklahoma and Arkansas, he's had 8 carries for 15 yards and 11 carries for 17 yards, uh, respectively, and he's also been sacked 7 times in the last 2 games. So Tennessee has shown that they do have some deficiencies in pass protection, and I think if they want to allow Nico to play his best football, yet they got to protect him better. He has to make better decisions running the ball and throwing the football. He has to be more accurate, has to be more on target, and trench battle I think is also important as well, because Tennessee pride themselves on running the football a lot with their running backs, and they pride themselves on playing good defensive line. And the defense hasn't really been a problem for them, and it wasn't really a problem for them in their loss to Arkansas last week because they only gave up 19 points, which is not a lot in today's sport. But they, with Florida, obviously, Florida had a real good game against them in the trenches. Trevor Yates went off for 170 yards. The defensive line for Florida terrorized the quarterback Joe Milton last year, and a lot of them are coming back. And Florida is good in putting pressure on the quarterback. They're tied for 28th in the nation in terms of quarterback sacks defensively, meaning sacking the quarterback and getting to the quarterback. So, going up against the Tennessee team that's given up 7 sacks over the last 2 games, that should be a matchup that Florida is looking their chops over, and they're doing it by committee, because they're rotating a lot of the defensive players in and out, keeping those guys fresh. George Gums and uh, Desmond Watson and Caleb Banks and Cam Jackson and T.J. Searcy, along with their linebacker play with Pop Howard and Shamar James. And it's going to be important for those inside linebackers to make sure that they don't allow Nico to run around on them and to corral them when he gets out of the pocket as well. So trench battle is an important game really for both teams, but I think more so for Tennessee because of the reasons that I've stated before. And prediction here, I'm not going to try to make this video too long. My prediction here is that I think Tennessee wins at home 34-21 to get revenge for last year. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy or whatever, but it's just a big road game like this. I'm not sure if Mississippi State and UCF are the teams that you need to look at and be as and say that, we can beat Tennessee because of what we've done the last 2 teams. Tennessee's way better than all 3: Florida, UCF, and Mississippi State. And I just think that Tennessee is gonna play with their hair on fire for what happened last season between Florida and Tennessee, and they know that their season for making the college football playoffs is in jeopardy now that they had that embarrassing loss to Arkansas. So so my score for this game will be Tennessee 34, Florida 21. I could be wrong. I've been wrong in a couple of Florida games. I picked them to beat Miami. They lost to Miami. I picked them to lose to UCF. They beat UCF in my record prediction game. And while I am picking Florida to win this game. I will say I am heading into this game contradictingly. I understand with more confidence that they can beat Tennessee this year than last year because uh, or excuse me, that they can beat Tennessee on the road this year than I was 2 years ago, because 2 years ago was Napier's first year at Florida, and it was a big road test. And obviously, Tennessee had all this momentum waiting behind them. But I think 2 years later, with more familiarity with this Tennessee team, obviously a way better roster than what he's had now, and he's had more time to build up Florida in the image that he would like for them to be built up with. And you throw in the fact that Nico hasn't really played that well for Tennessee this year. This is why I wouldn't be as surprised of Florida going on the road and beating Tennessee this year as I was last year, or I would have been the year before in 2022. Those 2 years, 2022, I would have been shocked that Florida went on the road and beat Tennessee. Last year, I was surprised. I was very shocked with the way Florida played. This year, I wouldn't be as shocked if Florida did go on the road and beat Tennessee because of the reasons that I stated. I just don't see it happening. But we'll see. I would hope to be wrong. Florida and Tennessee play tomorrow, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Go Gators.